in 2018. And we
Okay.
wanted to give something back to the society as we retired and were on our pensions. So this think tank took the shape. The think tank basically aims at research-based policy advice. We've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to do so. We worked with the Niti Aayog, we worked with some ministries, we worked with some international organizations. We've been very fortunate that we got an opportunity to work for Niti on a project India at 2047. So we did that in two parts and submitted to them. So that way, with the objective with which we started research-based policy advice, we've been successful in doing that. We have also been
Excellent.
trying. We have also been trying, and this is our more than 200 webinars that we have done to bring contemporary issues and discuss them in the forefront by not only our domestic analysts and experts, but even international experts. So we are very fortunate to have professors from Stanford, Harvard. We have had two Nobel laureates, and now we are getting the third Nobel laureate in April to come and speak to us. All contemporary issues that are very important, relevant for our country, we have been taking them up and requesting on a blend which has been really perfect. Indian experts, foreign experts on foreign topics, Indian experts and foreign experts on Indian topics. We've been very, very successful in that. Today, as you know, the Finance Commission has already been set up. We have already completed two webinars on the Finance Commission. One was totally exclusive on Northeast. Then we did one which was rest of India. Today, we are again doing a blend. We wanted to do one last week, but because last week there was something more urgent that happened, we had to change the date and we brought in the minimum support price. My colleague and founder director with me at EGROW, Dr. Vishan Das, chaired it. I would invite you to listen to that webinar. It is mind-boggling. We had experts from across the country speaking about the minimum support price. Continuing in that same tenor, today we are discussing the third series on the Finance Commission. And this will be the concluding series that we have. I'm sure Finance Commission is now going to start their work in full swing. We have invited in the past academicians and policy makers onto the discussion on the Finance Commission. We continue the same trend today. To chair the session today, we especially invited Mr. Sumit Bose, and I've known him for nearly 10 years now, known him earlier also, but since the last 10 years been working and looking at the type of work that he does. So we have invited him. And then we have also invited Madam Dakshita Das, who has been on our forum earlier and whom I have known also nearly 10 years. And then Professor Amitabh Kundu, who has worked with us for our project in 2047. Professor Suresh Babu has not worked with us earlier, but I have had a chance to interact with him when he was at the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. And then I have also invited this time, especially Professor Vanlalchhawna. So let me give a brief introduction, very brief introduction, because I know the topic is very wide. I also know the topic is very interesting, and therefore you would be more keen to listen to the experts rather than their introduction, which obviously are so well known already. So let me just briefly introduce our speakers for the day before handing it over to the chair of the session, Mr. Sumit Bose. Mr. Bose is former Expenditure Secretary, Ministry of Finance. He has already worked in the 13th Finance Commission as the secretary. Immediately prior to superannuation, he was the Union Finance Secretary. That's he was Secretary, Department of Revenue. And he has also worked as in the Expenditure Management Commission. That is where I saw him more extensively, and was kind enough to come to IIM Bangalore, where I was housed there and saw the rigor with which he was bringing up that report. He's been with the IS for many years. He's been also served in the government of Madhya Pradesh in various capacities. Right now, he's chairman at Vidhi Center for Legal Policy and chairman at Jal Seva Charitable Foundation. He is also member governing body at the Barefoot College and chairman governing body at Parivar Education Society and on board of many other companies. Our second speaker for the day, as I mentioned, is Madam Dakshita Das. She has been the MD and CEO of the National Housing Bank, and she has also been in the Ministry of Finance and has about 35 years of experience in the government. She has represented India in various forums. She has been awarded the Distinguished Alumni of the Year award by her alma mater, Lady Shri Ram College. Our third speaker for the day is Professor Amitabh Kundu. He is a senior fellow with the Sustainable Cities and Transport Program at WRI India. He has been a distinguished fellow at Research and Information System for Developing Countries, RIS. He was professor and dean at the School of Social Sciences at JNU, a member of National Statistical Commission, and chaired the post-Sacher Evaluation Committee and that for estimating urban housing shortage. He is most well known for that urban housing shortage report which he prepared, where he showed India is short by about 24 million houses. And another very rigorous research that he has been involved with. Professor Suresh Babu is a professor in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Chennai. He was earlier with the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics. His areas of interest are applied macroeconomics, industrial economics, trade, and development. He has worked as a consultant for the Asian Development Bank also. And recently he was here as advisor in the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. The last speaker for the day, and he is Professor Vanlalchhawna. He is a professor of economics in Mizoram University, and I approached him very late and he kindly agreed to be part of our discussion. He is with the Central University in Mizoram. He has worked in different capacities, presently, of course, as finance officer in Mizoram University. He has been an expert member in Mizoram State Planning Board, member Mizoram Youth Commission, member Mizoram State Higher Education Council, and so on in his public life. He has worked at various places. He has been a member of Mizoram Economic Association, Northeastern Economic Association, the Indian Society for Ecological Economics, and associate member International Society for Development Sustainability, Japan. His areas of interest are education, public economics, ecological economics. With this, sir, I hand over the session to you and request you to please conduct the proceedings. Of course, offer your own thoughts, and we have time till 6 p.m. until, of course, we have other pressing questions, but till 6 p.m. we can comfortably go. With this, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Charan Singh, and thank you, Dr. Ashok Vishandas ji, for having me on this panel, and along with my fellow panelists, many of whom I am seeing after a long time, such as Dakshita, who's worked together in the Finance Ministry, Professor Kundu, with whom I have had the pleasure of interacting, and some of them a new Professor Vanlalchhawna. So welcome to you. Professor Suresh Babu is not on the screen at the moment, but I'm sure he will join in.
I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, you are there. Okay. So the Finance Commission has been set up, and they have actually started functioning because they have office space. The usual thing, Finance Commission struggles with all that. The setting up of the Finance Commission in the cycles are always eagerly looked forward to by the states, because the Finance Commission has played a key role in our federal entity. In an article in Mint today, Professor Indira Rajaraman, who was a member of our 13th Finance Commission, she calls it, she has said the Finance Commission, she has referred to it as the Fedicol, which keeps the Indian Federation together. She particularly, of course, refers to the sort of the formulaic transfers in that context. Now, the Finance Commission has a very challenging task in these times when there has been some sort of friction, additional friction in our and tensions within the federal entity. In a federal entity, there are bound to be tensions, but of late we have seen some of the tensions coming to the fore. If we look at the terms of reference of the Finance Commission, the government has really kept it simple. The bare bone, what is required under the Constitution, they have limited to that. And I think that's a great move, because it doesn't restrict the Finance Commission. It doesn't say that you have to do this or you have to do that. You have to look at climate change, or you have to look at how efficient some public sector enterprises are working, or some such things. They've left it to the bare bones, and hence it gives the Finance Commission a lot of flexibility. But at the same time, when it's such a bare bones terms of reference, puts a great deal of onus on the Finance Commission, and I think on the part of the central government, to both the central and the state governments. Central government, the temptation to then nudge the Finance Commission, though not in the parts, though it's not part of the terms of reference in other manner, that is something which they will have to keep away from. So now that is a bare bones terms of reference, let's get the Finance Commission to work on it. If we look at the Finance Commission and the way it has functioned, the 10th Finance Commission marked a fundamental change, because they recommended that sharing of net proceeds of all taxes of the government. They had to do that because of the way the inefficiencies were getting built into income tax, for example, in the collections, because the center had no incentive to collect in some manner if it was the old formula which was adopted. Accordingly, in the 11th Finance Commission onwards, the Finance Commissions have recommended shares of states out of the net proceeds of all central taxes. And this started at 29.5% for the 11th Finance Commission, 30.5% by the 12th Finance Commission, and 32% by the 13th Finance Commission. The 14th Finance Commission then took a different view. They stated that we are of the view that tax devolution should be the primary route of transfer and resources to state, since it's formula-based and thus conducive to sound financial fiscal federalism. And hence they said we won't give any other grants, stick to this, and they recommended 42%. Now this was quite a shift. Earlier we found that the Finance Commissions operated within a small, there were small incremental changes which I just read out, and here we came to 42%, and the 15th Finance Commission also kept it at 42%, 1% change because of the status of J&K. That change was made. Now, what has actually happened after that is a bit of a concern, because if we see, there have been two movements really since the award of the 14th and the 15th Finance Commission. The first is the imposition of a large number of cesses by the central government, as a result of which the transfers to the states has actually fallen well below what is recommended by the Finance Commission, by the 15th Finance Commission. I mean, if we look at, I was looking at some of the numbers. If you look at the gross transfer, it had actually gone up to, I mean, it was as high as 36% for 1920. Thereafter, 2021, 29%, 21, 22, 33%. and 22-23 it's a 31 or 32%. Again, Dr. Indira Rajaraman's article today, it tries to finesse that by saying keeping away GST. She's done some calculations by taking out GST compensation, but even she comes to this figure of I think 32.5% or 83% below the FC target of 40.8. That's the adjusted number she has. So that is a big challenge, and this is what I think is causing some amount of disquiet in the states. That despite a recommendation which is considered favorable for the states at 42 or 41%, why are the transfers so much below what has been recommended by the states? And that is, of course, as we know, because of the large number of cesses which have been imposed. These cesses, no doubt, have perhaps having a beneficial impact on, say, creation of physical infrastructure, some on the agricultural side too. But as far as the states are concerned, from their point of view, this is they feel they are being shortchanged, and the recommendations of the Finance Commission are not being delivered to them either in spirit or in the actual transfers. The second part, what really the movement which took place is, you see, the centrally sponsored schemes never went away. So we had a committee, I recall, under my former Chief Minister, Shivraj Singh, Chief Minister of Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Chief Minister of MP, and the Niti Aayog had set up that committee, and they came up with recommendations to say the CSS, the transfers should be 60-40 basis, and for some schemes on 50-50. In reality, what has happened, many schemes shifted from 75 to 60-40, and some schemes, of course, the center has even kept at 100%. But again, what really has transpired as is that, contrary to perhaps what the Finance Commission, at least the 14th Finance Commission laid down and later the 15th, felt or wanted to happen, the states were actually asked to fork out a larger share of their own resources to meet the state share. So two trends. One, because of cesses, transfers are below the levels at which they've been recommended, and the other is the states having to pick up a larger share. Let me illustrate to you by one state for which I got some numbers. That is the state of UP. See, UP, if you look at 14-15, out of a total expenditure on CSS of 15,000 crores, the center was funding 80%. That means 20% was only being funded by the state. But in 21-22, out of an expenditure of 55,000 crores, as much as 59% was being picked up by the state. So almost, I mean, from 80-20, it's become 40-60. 40 center and 60 states. Now, that is a fundamental shift. This has also put, so the states are really asking that, are we really, I mean, so what happened to this 42 and 41%? And many have gone on to say that this really hasn't helped us because of the other sort of changes which has taken place. These two are two prominent themes. One is because of the cesses, the actual share dropping, and the other, even from that limited share, the states having to fork out more for centrally sponsored schemes. Now, I think this the 16th Finance Commission will have to grapple with this issue and come out with their recommendation. They surely will, and I'm sure in that process they will also consult with EGROW, because they normally reach out to a large number of institutions, and I'm sure you will also get a chance to put the views before the commission. But this is something which is a bit of a challenge. It's a bit of a challenge because all finance commissions, you have to balance the needs of the center, including that of defense, internal security, development at the central level, and the states. And that balance, of course, is a tricky one, and it has to be done. And that is really the challenge which I think the Finance Commission will face. And I'm sure, as in the past, other finance commissions, they will come out with recommendations which will be by and large acceptable to all levels of government. But that I think this trend and how to sort of assuage states more than the center, how to assuage states that they are going to get a fair deal, that is very important. I think the vertical transfers, once this problem is solved, the horizontal one, of which lately, we heard the southern states and some amount of, again, disquiet there and protests. But I think that part of it will get sorted out once we get the vertical transfer issues sorted out. I think this is more critical than the horizon. They are no doubt critical. And we have to see, for example, how the population issue plays out. The last Finance Commission had to grapple with this demon of the 2011 population having come in, and they managed quite successfully to also add in the demographic sort of measures which states had taken, and to blunt, I must say, to blunt the effect of the 2011 population, and I think they balanced out things. But this is into my mind, the vertical transfers issue and these two trends are sort of fundamental issues for the Finance Commission. With these this is all I have to say right at the beginning, and with this, I think let me go to this distinguished panel, and let me start with request Professor Kundu to give his views on what are the challenges before the Finance Commission. How do you think the Finance Commission should proceed? Over to you, sir. You are on mute. Professor Kundu, you are on mute. You will have to unmute.
I didn't hear that you wanted me to come in. I thought
sorry.
There are others who have worked on the Finance Commission for longer. I thought I'll just raise a couple of issues for consideration of the experts. But I'm impressed by your optimism, that you feel that if the issues of vertical devolution are sorted out, you think that the horizontal issues which are being raised, and some of the statements are almost threatening to strike at the very roots which supports Indian federal system, and they would just get sorted out. On the other hand, I thought with the central government emerging as powerful, they can be a little more relaxed about the center-state relationship, and certainly can respond to the demands that are being made with regard to the share of the states to be maintained at least at 40.8% or 41%. And frankly, I would like to focus on the issues relating to the horizontal distribution, and I'll be very brief and share just 2 or 3 of my concerns and my suggestions. But my analysis of the data of the 15th Finance Commission shows. Am I audible and visible? Yes. Certainly shows that out of the total funds available for devolution, as up to 25, 26, 40% have been allocated. And in addition to that, there are about 2 lakh crore which is coming as grants in aid. There I have a feeling that the share which is given for gap meeting the revenue deficits is pretty high. Out of the 2 lakh crore which is meant for this grants in aid, about 50% is for that, but only less than 0.7% is for devolution to the local bodies, rural and urban local bodies, which I thought was rather very, very small. and with the talks about decentralization coming in. So as far as the vertical transfer is concerned, I think the allocation for the rural and urban local bodies need to be addressed. And there, as Sumit has pointed out, that I have not looked at the actual devolution in the last 2-3 years, but if that is falling significantly short than what has been already mentioned in the Commission's report, that certainly needs to be addressed. But I'm really amazed by the way the 15th Finance Commission allocated funds for local bodies by the formula which they have used. I was absolutely astonished that the allocation across the states for the local bodies is made not on the basis of urban population classified by different size categories. It is based on total population. Total population, 90% weightages, 10% area weightages across the states, which really means you are bringing in once again population figure of the states. Kerala, you don't look at the percentage of urban population in Kerala and making the allocation initially. You just look at the total population, which I thought was rather, hurried kind of a thing. You make allocation on the basis of population and area, 90-10%, and then after you have made that allocation for different states, then you distribute as 32% and 67% or 68%. That again is a very standard one size fits all kind of a criteria. And how do you distribute for million plus cities and non-million plus cities? That is left to the state government. But I have a feeling that in the vertical devolution, the Finance Commission should have been a little more careful. I had a small PPT. Is it possible to show that? Dr. Charan Singh, I had sent to Vivek. I'll show just 2 or 3 slides from that. But even if that is not available, I can just speak. Is it possible to?
Professor Charan Singh, I don't see him on the screen right now.
He's not there, but Vivek, is he supporting? Charan Singh,
he's back. He's back. Yeah, he's
right. Just first one. Can you go to the next one? See, I'm really coming straight into the critical issues for which there's a lot of agitation, the Jantar Mantar politics, 2 chief ministers coming, 1 state going into the Supreme Court, and most of the southern states are in a way in support. Siddaramaiah, of course, the chief minister of Kerala, Vijayan, is also there. Stalin supported strongly the position taken by Siddaramaiah. I just want to summarize the feeling of the southern states and some of the developed states. The protesting non-BJP governments point out that for every tax rupee they contribute to the center, Karnataka gets only 15 paise, Kerala gets 25 paise back, and Tamil Nadu 29 paise. Contrast this with Uttar Pradesh that gets 2.73 rupees, Bihar which gets a whooping 7.06 rupees. And now rest of it is politics, but still let me read it. For the BJP, this issue has come as a setback, as it was already seen as having little chances of making much headway in the south in the coming elections. Forget about that. But that is the general kind of a feeling that we give so much of money in the tax pool, including the GST, which is collected within the state, and we get so little. Is this a right principle to look at in the public finance? Can we say, I give this much into the taxable fund, I belong to this income category, or my district belongs to that income category, I give this much and I should get at least certain percentage of it? Is this a right question, right way of putting that? Obviously, that would mean that the richer sections of the population who pay large part of the taxes are entitled to a larger share. I think that really needs us to go to the fundamental principles of taxation, because taxes are paid for the status that we already have enjoyed in earning our income. Taxes are paid for the conveniences on the social and economic environment which has been created. If every region starts asking the question that how much share do I get out of the money I have collected? Taxes are being collected on the basis of the convenience of tax collection. Just because central government is collecting the taxes, it is not entitled, but it is collecting taxes from ABC states to say that, well, each state should have some certain percentage. You keep 20% as your collection charges, give us the rest. That would be not fair, but nonetheless, in the federal climate today, it is difficult to really bypass and just wash out this. The alternate position, which has been mentioned, I will just mention to you, and I have the statistics for that. The less developed states in the country, which is Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, take Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, also Rajasthan, and Odisha, you find that per capita allocation transfer from the central government is just 10 to 15% more than the average. Average is 5,400 rupees per person. Only the poorer states are getting 10 to 15% more, whereas the developed states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, and most of the southern states are getting 20 to 30% less than the average, which makes a gap of 50 to 60%. Now, is that fair? Because the income gap, per capita income gap, is 4 times Bihar and compare with Maharashtra or many of the southern states. So this is the debate, that if the Finance Commission mandated totally to address the issue of regional disparity in development, or should the Finance Commission, as Sumit was mentioning, that what should be the mandate? The central government cannot interfere and start specifying that you should do this, you should bring in sustainability, you should bring in, corruption should be reduced, inefficiency of the northern states, they waste their money. Why should our efficiency in family planning, our efficiency in tax collection, our efficiency in managing health system should go unnoticed and we should not get a reward for it? I mean, I don't think Finance Commission can really take up such challenging responsibilities. But now, I'm just saying that these are opposite positions. One is that the states are demanding certain amount of share on the taxes which are being collected from there. And second is the less developed states. Please go to the next one. I think there is an interesting correlation. Can you go to the next one? The next slide. Next one. Well, yes, I think this shows the correlation coefficient between per capita transfer and per capita income. Do you know what is the correlation coefficient? It's always 0.9, 0.8. And it went down slightly in the 14th Finance Commission, but it improved again. So there is an equity consideration. Per capita transfer and per capita income are strongly negatively correlated. That is all right. But the issue is this gap which is coming up in the allocation, can it be politically acceptable, and can the 16th Finance Commission address this issue of the South being discriminated against, or some of the more efficient northern states are not getting enough reward for their efficiency managing their administration? How do we address that? I have a feeling that if the 16th Finance Commission takes this position that no, we are going to increase the allocation slightly for the states which are more efficient, having higher tax effort, having better management of their services, health, education, have achieved high reduction in the total fertility rate. If it starts with that compromise, it's going to get into political tussle. Similarly, on the other hand, if it starts by saying no, the poorer states, their share should go up, if you explicitly take that kind of a position to start with, again you are likely to face serious objection. My submission, therefore, as a student of Professor Amartya Sen, I thought let's put forward an axiomatic approach. Certain axioms, we say forget about your actual allocation, put it in the box, lock it down. Let us look at the principles based on which we should do the allocation, and once you accept those principles, then we'll see what kind of devolution comes in. I just wanted to try this, and I want to quickly go over the 5 criteria which have been used by the 15th Finance Commission and re-examine, and I will make 1 or 2 suggestions there, and I will stop at that. Can we go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Yes. if we can make it slightly bigger, you will find the last column gives the share in the total devolution. The first column gives the share in the total population. You do find that the share of the less developed states like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, their share in the devolution is higher compared to their share in the population. UP's share is 17% in the devolution, population share is 15%. So is Bihar, so is Chhattisgarh, so is Jharkhand, right? Okay, this is understandable because there are poorer states, but if you look at most of the southern states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, again, you do find that their share in the devolution is slightly less, which really means that the per capita transfers which have been made to the different states are based on the equity criteria. Per capita transfer for the backward states, as I said, is 10 to 15% higher. But you look at the next slide. This is northeastern states. Northeastern states have got a higher share in the devolution than their population share, much higher share in the population, because they are special category states. Although Jetli mentioned that we will not entertain special category states from the plains, Bihar or UP or Odisha, asking that's for special category states should not be there. But nonetheless, you do find the concern for safety, security in the international border, concern for maintaining ecology. There's huge forestry. And the area has to be measured not in a two-dimensional plane, but three-dimensional plane. There are hilly areas. So considering that into consideration, you do find that the share in the devolution in the northeastern states is higher. And I was just 2 days ago, I presented it and I did not find much of a resentment or concern in all these northeastern states regarding the allocation. Is it because of Assam having the same political disposition as the central government or not? But nonetheless, they think that their interest will be well protected within the principles, the equation-based, indicator-based principles which have been followed by the Finance Commission, and if it's subjected to interstate negotiations like it happened in NDC, it is likely that northeastern states may not get it. So that is why they're quite satisfied, and you do find, despite the position being taken that special category states may not be given importance, you do find from 12 to 13 to 14 to 15 Finance Commission, the share of the northeastern states as a whole and individually has gone up. Please go to the next one. But by the way, just let me tell you, there are 5 criteria. Just go to the last one. I just wanted to mention one thing in this table. There are 5 criteria. Population gets a 15% weightage. Okay. Demographic performance gets 12.5% weightage. What is demographic performance, by the way? Demographic performance is not how much you have reduced in your total fertility rate. No, it is just the total fertility rate itself, reciprocal of that. And that is sensible. You know why? Because Kerala has already received 1.7 as their total fertility rate. To bring it down further is impossible. I mean, Gompert's scarf says that total fertility rate cannot go down like that. So instead of taking the changes in the total fertility rate, 15th Finance Commission used total fertility rate itself, reciprocal of that. So obviously Kerala gets a slight advantage in per capita terms, but you take 1 upon total fertility rate for all the states, but then you multiply by the total population of each state, so that the money that Madhya Pradesh will get for demographic performance will be still higher than what Kerala will get, because you take 1 upon TFR, which will be certainly higher because you are dividing by higher value, but you multiply by population. Kerala's share will be less than that of Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, because population is not coming just in the first indicator. In demographic performance it is coming, then it is also coming under income distance. That is very interesting. How do you calculate income distance? Each state's income from the highest income. Highest income is Goa. But well, you say Goa is an extreme case. Next is Sikkim. Okay, that's also an extreme case. Take Haryana. So you calculate the distance, income distance of each state from Haryana, and that gives you the deficit. And then what do? After you've taken the deficit, income deficit, which for Bihar will be huge, because you are calculating the income deficit from the highest, not from the average. And once you have done that, you again multiply by the population, so that the total share in under income distance criteria is very high in case of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Would you know how much share under this criteria income distance goes to Uttar Pradesh and Bihar? 43% of the total money under income distance criteria goes to Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Again, I am not saying this is something erroneous. 38% of the multidimensionally poor also live there. So that is one thing. But nonetheless, as I said, population figures, not only in the first indicator, but population performance, income distance, and fiscal effort to GDP, which is each state how much of tax you have collected as a share of GSDP. And that, of course, you have collected more, you get a higher weightage, and the coefficient will be certainly higher in the southern states because their tax effort is slightly higher. You say Bihar, people don't have paying capacity. You can't blame only the people. The governance system is also perhaps there, but nonetheless, tax effort also again being multiplied by population. And in addition to that, the local government transfer is also being multiplied by population. So population comes 5 times. And which population? 15 Finance Commission uses the population of 2011 census. And I believe that 16 Finance Commission would be able to use some population figure for the 2021 or some estimated population. I will not take much time now. I just want to talk about the suggestion that I have for your consideration. Please go to the next one. Go to the next slide, please. So we know the weightages of the 5 different criteria. This is per capita figure. You see, Arunachal Pradesh gets 1, which is equal to the average per capita transfer from the central government through the Finance Commission, which is devolution plus the grants in aid. You have Bihar, which is 1.1, it is just 10% more than the average, but Karnataka has 0.7, which is 30% less than the average. So is Kerala. Madhya Pradesh has got 30% more. Uttar Pradesh has got 10% more. So there is some difference in per capita allocation, but the gap is not that high. If you compare the income gap, it is 4 times. 1:4. Here it will be 1:1.8. Now, please go to the next one. This is again showing the northeastern states. There you find that the per capita transfer is higher, and I don't think there is much of a complaint because they have the responsibility of maintaining ecology, forestry. They cannot use the forestry for commercial purposes. I just give you my final remarks for your consideration. I have done calculations over a period of a week. Have by the revised formula I'm proposing, just see how logical it seems, or does it seem very illogical? And if you think that no, this principle is not that bad, then I will give you the results which I have obtained. My submission is that the 16th Finance Commission cannot and should not make a departure from using the population figure of 2021. You cannot say that, look, if you have not controlled your fertility, you are responsible for it. Fertility rate is a matter, a part of poverty syndrome. You can't just blame the people. There are a whole socio-economic transformation which is required. And I certainly think that the 14th Finance Commission did not do it justice by using 1971 population. 2021 population should be used in all the five indicators that have been mentioned. So that would in a way help the northern states, the less developed states which are highly populated. But my submission is income distant criteria. I would like to ask, what is the logic of calculating income distance of each state from Haryana, from the highest one? Your frame is 5-year. Finance Commission is talking about 5 years frame. Why are you taking for each state the income deficit to be from the highest, not from the average? I think if you want to increase the allocation in favor of the poorer states, you take the distance from Switzerland. You will get a much higher figure. I personally believe that the share which is given to the income distance criteria should remain as 45%. But income distance, my submission is, should not be calculated on the basis of the difference of per capita average income for the 3 years. That's what 15th Finance Commission has done, divided by the actual population for these 3 years. You calculate the distance of Bihar from the average per capita income of all the states which are above it. That is what income distance is. So for Uttar Pradesh, you exclude those states which are below Uttar Pradesh, find out Uttar Pradesh's per capita income difference from the average of all these states which are above. Come to Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh. For each state, you calculate the distance of the income of that state from the average of all the states which are above it, and then multiply by the total population. That is my submission. That, well, I certainly agree that vertical devolution is an issue. We should try to ensure that 40% certainly gets actually transferred. But as far as the horizontal distribution is concerned, I think it would be very unfair to suggest that the Finance Commission is responsible for improving the efficiency and reducing the corruption in the northern states by slapping in terms of, giving less allocation by moving from population of 2021 to 71. But my submission is keep everything constant, but measure income distance for each state from the average of those states above it. And I will tell you before you start disagreeing with me, because the results are very important. Professor Sen says once you agree on the principle, then people would have less disagreement on the result. But that would not happen. The moment you propose a criteria and they say, oh, the result is this, result is that the inequality in distribution of income distance criteria gets much reduced. The share of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar comes to 28% from 43% because you are calculating income distance in a different manner. Thank you very much. I've given my suggestion. This, I hope I can share the calculations which I have done on this, and this is my proposal that can be at least considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kundu. Thank you. And you've obviously done a lot of work on this, which I'm sure the Commission will benefit from. Now, can we go to Professor Suresh Babu?
Thank you. I have a
Good to see you.
small set of slides, so let me just put it up. Is it visible, the slides?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So let me start by a very brief.
Is it possible to enlarge it a little? I do not know. Full screen, then everyone could see it.
Give me a minute. I'll stop and I'll do it once more. Just give me a minute. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so let me start with a very brief introduction, but at the same time with the risk of being slightly repetitive, because I think a lot of issues have been covered both by our chairman as well as Professor Kundu. But I think there are 2 or 3 issues which really needs close consideration in the context of 16th Finance Commission. And why do I say this? I say this because the transfers have to really correct the fiscal mismatch between revenue sources and expenditure needs of the state. But it should also reduce the possible inequalities in their revenue capacities and costs of providing public goods and services. So I think that is going to be the major challenge which the 16th Finance Commission will have to really encounter. Now, so both these problems, what we talked about, that is both in terms of vertical imbalances as well as the horizontal imbalances are controversial. There's no doubt about that. And in some cases, the criterions are guided by political dominance and not necessarily on the basis of economic rationale. Okay. Now, so what is our mandate then generally for finance commissions? Well, four things. One, distribution of the divisible pool, which is well known between union and states. Fixing the interstate shares. What should be the grant in needs, and augmenting the consolidated fund, and we need to keep that in mind when we move forward. Now, in this context, I would like to touch upon 5 issues which have already been flagged. That's why I say, with the risk of being slightly repetitive. One, I think this growing vertical imbalance, especially given the context of cesses and surcharges. Second, the question of horizontal imbalance, which was dealt at length by Professor Kundu also. 3 additional things I would like to bring in. One, there is a tendency for additional borrowing by the states. How do we see this? Fourth, and very important, grants to local governments, which is extremely important in the context of an urbanizing, growing economy. And finally, this whole question about revenue deficit grants. How do we really, treat them? Now, vertical imbalance, already we have talked about it. As per the 15th Finance Commission report, the states had only 37.3% of the resources, but they were responsible for 62.4% of the incurred expenditure. Now, this reflects the large vertical imbalance arising between the union and states. And this is also a worry because the effective commitment of expenditure compared to the union's revenue raising powers is actually a problem for the states. Given the fact that we have moved quite a bit with our GST regime, the states are now put themselves in a corner in terms of looking at avenues for additional resource mobilization. Yeah. For example, we were hearing about Kerala. The possibilities for Kerala are basically what we call as LLP, that is, liquor, lottery, and petrol. Yeah. So the avenues are decreasing for the states to mobilize more resources, but at the same time, their expenditure commitments are quite high. And this is something which we really need to consider. Now, while this is a mandate of Finance Commission to bridge this gap, we find that there is a gradual increase in cesses and surcharges, which means that the divisible pool is actually not growing because the growth in the total pool is because of cesses and grants. And these are not shareable. And that is exactly what Indira Rajaraman has again flagged in today's article in the Mint. Yeah? So, what is the general trend in this? Trend is very clear that cesses and surcharges, which were around 92,537 crores in 2011-12 has increased to 4,36,000 crores, which means that there has been an increase of 4.7 times. Now, please remember, this has to be seen in light of the expenditure commitments of the states. So the center is actually able to mobilize more revenues. Now, while this increase in cesses and surcharges are part of the gross tax revenue, which has increased from 10.5% to 20.2%, the pool that is divisible has not grown to that extent. And that is a major problem. So number one, as far as I'm concerned, would be how are we going to deal with cesses and surcharges? And 16th Finance Commission will have to take a call on this. Second is the question of horizontal imbalances. Now, despite all these good intentions about the Finance Commission, and with thorough fiscal scenarios analyzed, often weaker states find themselves discriminated against. And that is precisely the mandate which they have to bridge now. Yeah. Now, what we find is that, take the case of Bihar. Yeah, the selection of population, 2011 population as a criteria and income distance are very desirable steps. But indicators like demographic performance, area, forest, and ecology and tax effort add up to a deficit of around 40% for qualifying criteria for Bihar. Now, how are we going to deal with this vertical imbalance? Now, it's evident from economic theory, and Professor Kundu had already emphasized that, backwardness and population growth rate is a common phenomenon, and it goes hand in hand. Now, we also know that increase in population in backward states is not a willful choice. And it is among the basic characteristics of a very weak economy. So while selecting criteria, the needs of the states must be taken into consideration, especially in the case of underdeveloped states like Bihar, Jharkhand, and Uttar Pradesh. But what is happening is that instead of the needs-based kind of an approach, commissions generally follow the same old formula-based kind of a pattern. And this is where I think we need some kind of an innovation in terms of having better criterion for devolution, especially for the poorer states. Let me just highlight one small issue here. Now, look at the low income states and their shares. Yeah, Bihar is getting 10%. Yeah, and we also find that Bihar's share compared to the 12th and 13th Finance Commission, yeah, has remained more or less the same. Uttar Pradesh share has come down slightly compared to the 12th Finance Commission, but it is also having a very high share. But when it comes to the high income states, we find that Maharashtra's share has actually increased. When we look at 12th Finance Commission, where it had 4.9% of the total devolution, now it is 6.3%. While other states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu witness a share. So there is some kind of a mismatch among the high income states as far as devolution is concerned. And that is where perhaps we need to fix the problem. Because it is this declining aggregate share that is actually giving us, a kind of a distorted picture that the overall share is coming down. And the states actually are arguing that because the overall share is coming down, the center is actually, tightening certain schemes, etc. on them, and center is actually putting the states under pressure. So this whole allocation, as far as high income states, then needs a kind of a relook, and we need to work out a better mechanism. While the low income states, I think we need to adopt what we call as a needs-based approach. Okay. Moving on to the next three kind of issues. One is the question of additional borrowings by the states. Yeah. Now, responding to the needs of the state governments whose resources were seriously impacted by the pandemic, 15th Finance Commission provided additional borrowing limit up to 2%. Of the additional 2%, 0.5% was unconditional, and remaining 1.5% was conditional, right? Out of the conditional component, 1% of GSDP was given in 4 tranches, 0.255, and they were linked to reforms, especially in terms of electricity sector, universalization of this ration card scheme, ease of doing business, etc. And some of it are a little hazy. For example, this whole issue of ease of doing business itself is a little, hazy business. But the remaining 0.5% is permissible if milestones are achieved in at least 3 out of the 4 reform areas. Yeah, I think assessing this kind of conditionalities could actually lead to some element of arbitrariness, which could impact in the kind of a center-state relations and often cause frictions. Now, overall, what we find is that Well, the base limit for net borrowings for state governments have been fixed at 4% for the financial year 21-22 following the pandemic, and which was supposed to fall to 3.5% and touch the FRBM target of 3% by 25-26. Will we be able to do that? How are we going to have this kind of a fiscal adjustment path? Will it be a smooth transition? All these are questions which would come up for the 16th Finance Commission, and addressing this could be a major challenge as far as the borrowings are concerned. Fourth and very important point, what are we doing with the grants to local bodies? One of the problems that I see is that the conditions imposed on the release of grants to local bodies are actually alarming, because the 15th Finance Commission recommended 2.4 lakh crores for rural local bodies, 1.2 lakh crores for the urban local bodies, and further some health grants through local government bodies. Now, the distribution of these grants is based on the criteria of population and area, and rural-urban ratio. However, the problem comes here. 60% of these grants have been made based on 3 entry conditionalities. Setting up of the state finance commissions, which is very important. A lot of states did, some did, but the reports have not been submitted. So executing their recommendations by March 2024 would be a little difficult for certain states. Second, states have to place the audited accounts for the year before the previous year, T-2, and provisional accounts for the previous year, T-1 in public domain. Very important. 3, for urban local bodies and local governments, notification of floor rates for property tax, for financial year 21-22, and after that, annual increases matching the 3-year average growth rate in GSDP has to be formulated. Now, these 3 are very important conditions, and some states have done, some states have not done, and this could lead to a kind of a mismatch as far as the grants for urban local bodies are concerned. But then, when these entry conditionalities are met, further conditionalities can come, and these further conditionalities are imposed for 60% of the grants, which are tied to water supply and sanitation. For urban local bodies, solid waste management is also included. This means that 40% of the grants can be spent according to the local priorities. The specific needs of local bodies are ignored, and they are compelled to meet a compliance of 60% to avail the rest of the grant, and that could put a lot of burden as far as the local bodies are concerned in terms of meeting their commitments. And we know that the avenues for them for raising additional resources are limited. Then comes another very important question. Are these revenue deficit grants really justifiable? Now, states with revenue deficits should be supported with grants only when they ensure that their borrowings are wholly channelized towards capital expenditure. We know that as per FRBM 2003, revenue deficits of all states should be or should have been 0 by 2008-9, and it has not happened. By providing revenue deficit grant, finance commissions have been penalizing the states who have actually strictly followed the FRBM norms. So phasing out the revenue deficit and promoting fiscal responsibility for both the union and the states was already suggested way back in the 9th Finance Commission. But in practice, a number of states are getting revenue deficit grants and have been gradually increasing. And what we find is that after a point, some of the states think that revenue deficit grants is their right, and they claim it. And they think that if the center is not giving that, they are being penalized. So instead of promoting revenue deficit grant, the 16th Finance Commission perhaps should give what I would really term as a development deficit grant to the states to help them in terms of catching up with other states. Okay. Now, this is the picture as far as the revenue deficit grants are concerned. the number of states that are availing revenue deficit grants, was 16 when the Finance Commission award was given. Now it has increased to 17. There was a drop in between. Again, we find that there is a rising trend, and this needs to be addressed as far as the 16th Finance Commission is concerned. Let me sum up. We know that in fiscal federalism, the objective should not only be to raise the backward states to the average level or filling the revenue gap, but also to promote a continuous process whereby states at various levels of development keep progressing. And that's very, very important, because states that have already been growing should not feel left out and should not feel kind of penalized for their achievements. Only such a process can actually bring the disparities down between states and address this question of horizontal inequality. Second, the aim of an emerging federation like India should be equalization and motivation of higher tax effort and expenditure efficiency. And we really need to keep that in mind. And to have a judicial vertical and horizontal balance, the 16th Finance Commission will have to consider the flaws in the transfers of the previous commissions, design a formula that looks into the needs of the low-income states, not a kind of an approach which overlooks the needs and gives certain kinds of grants. 16th Finance Commission will also have to consider some political developments. There is the question of freebies. There is question of so-called return to the old pension schemes. There is also kind of north-south federal fiscal debate that is really, catching up now. And that all will have an impact as far as the state's exchequer is concerned. So these need to be considered when we are working out an award. And instead of expanding the arbitrary and discretionary transfers under grants in aid, such as revenue deficit grant, 16th Finance Commission should focus on increasing the vertical share of the states, and that should be for more rational transfers under tax devolution. I would stop here, and if there are points for discussion, I'll be happy to take it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Suresh Babu. That was very lucid, and you covered a lot of ground. May I now request Dakshita to come in, because we've had, from a practitioner's point of view, anything
Sir,
on the
thank you, sir.
debate like to add?
Thank you, sir, and thank you, EGROW Foundation. I am going to speak more as a practitioner, as sir has said, having implemented the 12th Finance Commission and having played a role in the formulation of the TOR, if you recollect, sir, of the 13th. Preparation of TOR and laying the roadmap of the Finance Commission, as also implementing the recommendations of our Finance Commission, become easy in as much as what the Finance Commission does in terms of preparing its report. Certain philosophies are required, however, for any Finance Commission to be very successful. And I do rate the 12th Finance Commission as one of the easier commissions whose recommendations could be rolled out without any bias to the fact that, yes, I was there. We have Ritvik, who's the current secretary, who must have rolled out another Finance Commission. But constantly the theme has been that the states are inevitably aggrieved about something or another. And that's where the nature of fiscal federalism plays a very critical role. The Finance Commission is a very robust institution. And in my time in the budget division, whenever any bilateral, multilateral engagement was there, we always showcased this as a very transparent and a very democratic process, as also a statutory process by which engagement with stakeholders resulted in very, very good recommendations. But there are challenges. And from my perspective, there are three philosophies on which I would like to consider what this Finance Commission is going to face very serious challenges. One, of course, is what Professor Kundu in great detail has already debated over, and that is the population. The 16th Finance Commission has the freedom to choose its population data, quote unquote, the finance secretary. But it will not have the 2021 census data to go by. It will only have trends. And since population is a key determinant of how much a state receives, as we have seen from the previous speakers' very, very lucid slides, it is potentially a point of discomfort, particularly from certain states of the South, which have higher human development indices and lower population. Therefore, in the fiscal redistribution process based on weightage to population, their shares inevitably gets reduced. However, notwithstanding that, the fact is that they have adequate opportunity to make their case in front of the Finance Commission, and this is a point most of them are going to flag. We saw from the previous speakers about the Northeast states, and there we have also very interesting trends. Meghalaya has the highest population growth rate amongst the states. Amongst the union territories, the population of Andaman and Nicobar is the lowest. Nagaland has recorded a growth rate of minus 0.5%. India's over 6.5 lakh villages, which are inhabited by about 70% of the population, is seeing a rapid demographic change. And we already have forecasts that 5 metros of India are going to get choked in the imminent decades, India having become the most populous nation. Therefore, the challenge for the Finance Commission to go on data trends of population or to go using 2011 as a base, because post 2011 there have been a lot of dynamic differences in the way families are viewing themselves in rural urban migration. And let us not forget that a lot of migration is happening to those very states from where the maximum complaints are coming. Therefore, this, to my mind, is going to be a very critical challenge. How it will be addressed by the Finance Commission is going to be interesting. The other thing which we have heard our panelists discuss, and also in another webinar organized by EGROW, is tax and fiscal efforts. Now, the criteria was used by the 15th Finance Commission to reward states with higher tax collection efficiency. This is what we have heard previous speakers speak. We have also heard how states' own revenue share becomes a determinant in judging its efficiency. But have any finance commissions gone into further discrimination of the quality of such fiscal efforts? And this is where I bring two big bugbears into the discussion. One is the non-sharing of the petroleum in the GST pool, and the other is the alcohol taxation. We are very clear that some of the states, let us exclude Gujarat as a successful model, and let us exclude Bihar, which has gone in for prohibition and therefore has no source of revenue coming from excise duty on alcohol. But alcohol has no doubt helped states and union territories with legislatures to improve its earnings. And if you go deep inside, it shows that the revenue from state excise duty, which is largely a levy on alcohol, is estimated to increase by over no less than 34%. So that becomes a case that are the states doing justice in terms of a pure economic growth, or are they just flogging a low-hanging fruit to make their case that they have very, very good tax collection efforts? So though all regions saw an increase in this, some of the southern states, in particular Andhra Pradesh, had a fairly substantial jump. North too had, so did Central India, and we did have Uttar Pradesh also leading the way as far as revenues from UED are concerned. In the western and eastern part, western and eastern both got impacted due to Gujarat and Bihar not having UED based upon alcohol levies. So we come to the point that do we need the Finance Commission or any Finance Commission to take a look at the quality of revenue generation by the states before a case is made that they are more efficient. Now, here also one of the commonly misunderstood points between center and states is the fact that the center is performing substantial amount of functions which are non-divisible by nature. Defense being one, external affairs being another, interest payments being another. I mean, these are very big chunks. So while I don't support cesses and surcharges, unfortunately, a lot of it happened around the time when I was working in the budget division, and it laid the foundation for further cesses and surcharge. However, we do have a case where the center does need to appropriate a big chunk of revenue for its own needs, for the need of the nation rather. I will not call it its own needs, but I will call it the need of the nation. Therefore, at some level, if the states are using alcohol as their way of projecting healthier budgets and healthier fiscal balance sheets, the center too needs a certain amount of leeway and headroom for retaining certain receipts to take care of national priorities and national needs. But that's just a lesson on budgeting. My third point, which I think is a philosophical intervention, but it has now the time has come that instead of debating over the formulae of 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th, you see it's business as usual, where we say income, population, forestry. It's high time we brought in the factor of gender in the calculations of the Finance Commission. And here I make an economic point. On the parameter of gender inequality, India's gender inequality index value is very low, and we are ranked 122 worldwide. We host the largest population of women at around 691 million persons, whereas only 39 women are employed in the workforce. Now that's a very tragic story because today's GDP numbers give a very comfortable growth story. If we have to grow further, and if we have to really make a very tangible name for ourselves in the world economy, then we need to factor this in the Finance Commission formulae, various formulae. And in their engagement with the states, I think the Commission needs to put this as a parameter of discussion. Now, there is heartening news further that female labor force participation rate has improved by 4.2 percentage to say 37% last year, which is good because it goes to show that a lot of the effort by the government is seeing dividends. But the issue is that where are we in terms of very, very large interventions by the state? And here we come to I'll throw some data at you. NCRB data reveals that nearly 10% of the farmers who committed suicide were women. And who looks at agriculture largely? It is the states. Over 80% of the rural women who worked in agriculture are working in agriculture, but less than 13% own land. Yet again, it is an intervention where the states need to address themselves. Let's look at the ASHA workers, which is a huge army of women who are providing the last mile primary health care in India and recently awarded. And we've also had certain states trying to increase their the kind of honorarium they get. But we need to consider from the state's end, how are you enabling? Are you doing gig economy training? Are your ASHA workers getting adequately paid? Because all of that is creating an ecosystem whereby you are getting more productive and engagement from the 50% workforce which has not been mainstreamed and which has not been brought in. My points are therefore more philosophical. I do believe that while the older formulas have really helped in fiscal federalism, it is time for a further engagement because there is a rapid change at the ground level, and the dynamics of both society as well as economy are changing very fast. We are also going to look at a huge urban nightmare. And that urban nightmare is going to be fed by the largely populated states. So, therefore, the Finance Commission doesn't have a challenge of business as usual. It instead has a challenge where it needs to work out newer formulas, factoring in newer realities and newer needs. Thank you, sir. I'll limit
Thank you.
myself because of paucity of time.
Thank you, Dakshita. Thank you. And now, Professor Vanlalchhawna, I think we would also like to get the benefit of your views because you've done a webinar for the Northeast. So that will be a very it'll round up this session very well. Over to you. Vanlal? Professor Vanlal? Do you have a number for him to call?
Yeah. Okay, sir. Oh,
Yeah. You have to.
yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Uh,
As I was saying, see, we also you participated in that webinar on the East with relation to the finance
no, I
commissions. We
did.
get the
So,
benefit.
yeah.
We'll get the benefit of that too. The what you discussed there. That would be nice in this webinar.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir. I'm sorry to say that this is my first time, my first
Okay.
participation.
Okay.
Yeah, I checked with that that particular webinar relating to Northeast India. I could not get the because of some video problems. So today, I would like to say, I really feel privileged to share this webinar along with distinguished panelists. I really fortunate practitioner who know the reality of Indian federal finance. I'm just teaching in the university. I don't have any practical experience as such, but as a finance officer, I feel something about how central university are funding. So at the very outset, what I would like to share is Government of India has already declared National Education Policy 2020. But my biggest problem as finance officer is that where Government of India intends to increase gross enrollment ratio up, but funding for creation of additional facilities is extremely limited. Without additional funding, how could the university expand enrollment capacity? So I think this time, how best to implement NEP 2020 should be an integral part of the 16th Finance Commission consideration. Otherwise, by just having a policy, we cannot move forward unless the universities and other higher educational institution under the state, under the central government, if they are not provided fund properly as per the requirement of the NEP 2020, we cannot make much headway in this regard. So that is by way of introduction as a finance officer. So today, whenever I look at the Finance Commission Award, I really happy that the share of Mizoram is increasing in every finance commission. Okay, and personally, and from the point of an economic student, I don't have much to say about the criteria adopted by the Finance Commission. One thing I would like to share is that in spite of liberal funding from the Finance Commission and the previously Planning Commission, where is the future of small states in India? till today, we have not been able to achieve any meaningful development. And financially, we are still very, very weak. So the economic viability of small states like Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, Agartala, all these are at stake at this time of global troubles. What is our future as a small state? Can we attain any financial and economic viability? For instance, central transfer in Mizoram state budget is as high as 80%. The state has been able to generate only 20%. Out of 10,000 budget actual expenditure during 2022-23, the state could hardly generate 1,500 internal resources. This is the reality with us. So this is the real challenge. How best we can move forward. So we are talking about conditional revenue deficit grant. What would be the future of small state like Mizoram? This is a big question for me. And till now, out of the 5 grants recommended by the 15th Finance Commission, the state of Mizoram is getting revenue deficit grants, grants for local government, grants for disaster management. But we are still deprived of sector-specific grants and state-specific grants. These are grants which could have far-reaching impacts on the quality of life in the state. So my concern is that why not the entire recommendation of 15th Finance Commission was not implemented? Why only the statutory award part was adopted? This is my concern. And regarding the horizontal distribution formula, one particular thing which is very good for Mizoram is the incorporation of forest cover in the formula for distribution of state funds. This is continued in the 15th Finance Commission also, and I am expecting some more consideration in the 16th Finance Commission. Some people are also suggesting biodiversity may be included, and I think inclusion of more climate variables in the division of state shares should be welcomed by the northeastern states, because we can enlarge the scope by including climate change vulnerability index in the formula for devolution of state share. So another point I would like to raise is regarding the adverse impacts of the dissolution of Planning Commission had on the state financer. The demise of Planning Commission in 2014 brought adverse impact on the financing of state development, especially with reference to small state like Mizoram. So central plan assistance to Mizoram had gone down significantly. Only specific projects and programs are available to the state. The Finance Commission awards comprising of sales taxes and granting aids are the main revenue transfer from the state. Since granting aids are tied with the scheme, tax transfer play a significant role in ensuring the availability of adequate resources for investment in the state. Development funds needed for the state have gone away, adversely affecting state development prospects. Finance Commission awards, mainly of statutory components, could not address adequately funds needed for economic development of the state. So the state all the northeastern state needs special provision. During planning regime, NER states are categorized as special category states. Plan fund are given 90% grant and 10% loan. These provisions have helped a hilly state like Mizoram in meeting the constitutional obligations like providing basic social and economic services to the people. Since the dissolution of Planning Commission in 2014, the hilly state faced huge resource crunch. The fiscal conditions are in poor shape. For instance, Mizoram state has become one of the most indebted states. The state gross fiscal deficit, GSDP ratio is also very, very high, much higher than recommended in the fiscal policy document. State debt GSDP ratio is also one of the highest in India. The mismatch between revenue, receipt, and expenditure is adjusted by short-term borrowing to RBI ways and means advances. For capital expenditure, the state depends heavily on central sector schemes like special state assistance to states for capital investment. Here we call it SASI. And schemes under Ministry of Donor and NEC and loan from NABARD and other financial institutions. Now, one thing I would like to share is past Finance Commission provided state-specific grants to these are really enhancing the facilities available in the concerned state. For instance, the 10th Finance Commission provided rupees 57 crore for the construction of airport in Mizoram. Now, this airport is one of the links we have with other parts of India. The 11th Finance Commission provided rupees 40 crore for new capital projects, another rupees 5 crore for reconstruction of Ras Bhavan complex. 12th Finance Commission again provided rupees 40 crore to fight bamboo flowering in the state and to enhance agriculture facility and forestry sector in the state. And rupees 25 crore has been earmarked for construction of sports complex. And this is one of the best sport complex constructed in Mizoram so far. And 13th Finance Commission recommended another rupees 250 crore for 10 projects covering education, government buildings, health, and cultural heritage. 14th Finance Commission did not provide any sector nor state-specific grants. This is really bad for the state of Mizoram. And 15th Finance Commission, though provision had been made for performance-based incentive grants and state-specific grants, as I have already stated, they were not implemented by central government till date. So today my concern is the viability of the small state is at stake. And over the last 10 years, the fiscal condition of small state like Mizoram is deteriorating, which is very, very bad for the people. And this is going to invite more conflicts in the Northeast, sir. So we need a new package, a new constitutional arrangement to really understand the problem and issue concerning development in Northeast India. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for that perspective from the Northeast and from Mizoram in particular. Thank you for those views, and you've highlighted the fact that after the winding up of the Planning Commission, there are additional issues for the Finance Commission to consider. I think that is really what we get from your intervention. I think we have, it's past 6, so we have reached the end of this session on the Finance Commission. This has been, the panelists have put forward views. We have had an excellent discussion and a lot of material actually for the Finance Commission. But as with every Finance Commission, when when it's constituted, there seem to be insurmountable challenges. But the track record of our Finance Commission has been extremely good, and then they have managed to give reports which, by and large, have been accepted across states. There are always some grievances across the states and the center. We must remember that the Finance Commission is a very important institution, but it is not the only institution which can sort of further the relations between various constituents of the government, the central government, state government, and local government. There are other bodies too, so everyone has to pitch in. And I think the center, as well as states as a whole, as individually, they have to all work out issues in the spirit of cooperative federalism, which our country has been known for, and which the finance commissions have always been espousing. If you look at the report, the word cooperative federalism comes out every time. I think with that, we can bring this to a close. Perhaps something for the future, Professor Charan Singh, you can think of a session on local bodies, the role of the Finance Commission, something else. There's been a lot. Professor Kelkar, for example, recently has suggested over that time and again that a part of the GST should go to them, some constitutional amendments. Perhaps in a future session, we can consider a session focused on local bodies, Finance Commission too, but other issues related to GST, whether we should have a consolidated fund, especially for the local bodies, issues like that. We can. It's an issue by itself. Today we have touched upon it, but not done justice to that topic. Thank you very much, all of you, and thanks.
Thank you. Sir, I must thank you for suggesting that topic on local bodies. We will certainly do it. We'll do it. We are all booked till end of June, but in case any empty slot comes for some reason, we will try to fit in the local bodies there, because earlier the better, the good input to the 16th Finance Commission. We will do that. I must also share, sir, the thought on Northeastern Finance Commission. Actually, Professor Vanlalchhawna has in a way summarized what happened in that 90-minute session on Finance Commission in Northeast. And he has summarized it very well, sir, because that is exactly where the issues were coming up. What should be the criteria for the distribution, and should forest cover, should pollution, should infrastructure not be a criteria, and should only income gap should be the criteria and income difference should be the criteria. So those were the key issues that kept coming up in that, and I'll certainly send you the recording. But in a nutshell, that is what it was in that session on Northeast, which was on January 12th. And of course, Professor Shauna could not attend then, but there were others who were.
No, he's given a very good perspective.
And his perspective is very similar to the one which was given earlier in that 90-minute. So with this, I want to thank you, sir, for chairing the session. I want to thank each one of the panelists for being here with us today and talking to us on the Finance Commission. It's really been very, very interesting and very, very informative. I would also like to mention, sir, that, and the participants, that every day EGROW Foundation does something very important for the country in spreading economic literacy. So almost every day, other than Saturday and Sunday, we have some class or the other going on where experts are talking about some contemporary issue. And these are in bundle of 5 days. This could be introduction to financial markets. It could be conceptual macroeconomics. It could be contemporary issues in the Indian economy. It could also be in terms of IBC, lawyers, and law and economics. So those are the type of modules which we generally have. Almost every day, some class or the other is going on from 7:30 to 8:30. I would request the participants to please register for those classes. Those are very, very nominally priced. And in case somebody can't afford that nominal price, we are ready to waive it. It is meant for scholars, researchers. It is also meant for academicians, policymakers, also students. And PhD students can also benefit. So I would request you to consider spreading the word, probably joining yourself or spreading the word and letting your students or young professors in your faculty join and participate in those lectures. With this, sir, I'll close for the day. We have another webinar next weekend, and I would like to invite all of you to please keep it in mind. I will be sending the invite very soon, and you will have the topic and all the details with you. So next Friday, again around this time, we are going to tackle another issue on a contemporary issue on the Indian economy. With this, let me conclude and thank each one of you once again, the participants, as well as the panelists and the chairman, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.